Yeah. All right, so for 15, do you need, okay, so let me have that back. There it is. Oh, I was trying to call you, I didn't see it. So we are now going to jump into the 11 to 1 p.m. Sponsorship style. And we're going to start off with a history of sponsorship with Eddie. We're going to go into sponsorship styles by Andrew. One-wayism also by Eddie E. How to find a sponsor, John V. Cross-gender sponsorship, for and against. Everyone, I'd like to ask everyone that speaks to remain here sort of as a panel. And then finally back to basics, for and against, and then Q&A. So with Eddie, we'll start off with a history of sponsorship.
Okay, Dave just told me he needs 5 minutes to change over.
Okay, yes, I forget that, yeah.
While we do this, we're going to just have a brief discussion offline.
Great.
This is just a poll. I'm just going to do a poll. I was going to do this anyway, but it takes too much time. Who here has never had a sponsor? Raise your hand. In any program. In any program. Okay, let me qualify that. There's 2 people who never had a sponsor in any program. Who here has never had a sponsor in UA? Okay, quite a few people. Okay, now who here has had more than one sponsor in any program? Oh boy, look at this, a lot of people. Who here has had more than one sponsor in UA? Okay. Who here has had more than 3 sponsors in any program? Oh boy, look at this. Okay. Who here has had more than 4 sponsors? Okay, we got a lot of hands. Who here has had more than 5 sponsors? Jesus Christ. Who here has more than 10 sponsors? You stopped counting. Okay. A lot of people, more than 10, more than 10, more than 10. Okay. 2 more minutes? He's ready. Okay. Now that was very informative for me anyway. I don't know if it was for anybody else. Huh? Okay, let's ask that question too. How many people have been a sponsor? In any program have been a sponsor? Okay, pretty much the substantial, most of us have, like pretty 90%. Okay, so sponsorship. Let me just go through a history of sponsorship. Bill was sponsored by Ebby. Ebby was in the Oxford group. They did a quick and dirty way of running you through the steps. They had a 4-step thing, 6 steps thing, whatever you want to call it. They had their thing that they used to convert you into their philosophy, okay? And it worked. It took about 4 hours. Bill sponsored Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob... Is
this being recorded? Because I know people want to buy this portion.
Probably. Everything's being recorded. Okay? Dr. Bob sponsored how many people in his lifetime? Does anybody know? 600? 5,000. 5,000 people Dr. Bob sponsored. Think about it. That's a lot of people. So he sort of dedicated his life to sponsoring people. How is that even possible? Well, he took 4 hours once or twice a day to run through somebody through the steps. 4-hour process. That's the way Bill took him through the steps. That's the way Dr. Bob did that. Dr. Bob sponsored 5,000 people. One of the guys he sponsored went to Chicago, started AA there, and sponsored the people in Chicago. People from Chicago went to Colorado, sponsored people there. People from Chicago went down to West Florida, sponsored people there. People in New York sponsored people on the east side of Florida. That's how the program moved around the country. Now, at one point, Dr. Bob said this is too inefficient. So he asked one of his sponsees to create a step guide, which was never approved by AA, but it doesn't matter. It went all around the country pretty much, and people used that as a step guide. Also, by the way the 4-column was done was never done in early AA. Now, what was the success ratio of this particular way of working? Well, in those days, if you went to Alcoholics Anonymous, they took your name and they kept track of you. Every day you talked to somebody, you sponsored a meeting, and so they knew if you relapsed. The success rate was over 60%. That's pretty huge for dealing with just drunks, low-bottom drunks. These are not high-bottom drunks. These are just people that would qualify for the World Health definition of alcoholism. I would suggest in AA today there's only probably 30% that would qualify for that definition. Not that they aren't allowed to go in there, because they raised the elevator years later and allowed almost anybody to come in. But you know, in early AA, they didn't know how to break denial. If you didn't want to do this work, they said, fine, go drink some more. They didn't know how to break a denial. So most of us here are sitting with a bunch of denial about everything. So you got to have a sponsor that helps you break the denial. But let's go on more with the history of sponsorship. So Dr. Bob asked one of his sponsees to come up with some other system. So they came up with a group format. What they did is, for example, in a month, on a Monday night, you had a meeting. In an hour and a half, they took you the first 3 steps. The next Monday that month, they would take you through the next 3. The next Monday would take you to the next 3. The next Monday after that, they would take you to the rest. So in a month, you would have gone through the steps. You got a pin, and these pins were used all over the country. Pins, all kinds of different ways of designating that you went through the steps, okay, in this process. And then, of course, you did 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis, and you had somebody to call every day. That was the main thing. You had a meeting to go to, a live meeting or more to go to, as many meetings as you can go to. You met privately outside. You socialized, meeting before the meeting after the meeting, and you had connection with somebody on a daily basis. It was a very, very live program. There was also a verbal tradition that was passed on from sponsor to sponsor, from person to person to person, and there was less of a reliance on the big book. The big book was written, but hardly anybody could afford it. It was very expensive, and in the meetings they read it in the meeting, but only certain paragraphs, and most individuals couldn't afford it. Okay, I'm deviating, but anyway, so now that led, these workshops led to a sort of more massive ways of people doing the steps. Somebody wrote something called the Little Red Book. Bill was pissed off about that because somebody was making money on the step process, and so he decided to write the 12 and 12 for that reason, also to put together the traditions. And after that, people stopped using this methodology, especially in New York. So you came from sponsorship, and by the way, the early term of sponsorship is the guy that paid for your rehab bill. It wasn't even the guy that you called on a daily basis. And in those days, when you went to rehab, and there's an article in Saturday Evening Post where 2 alcoholics went into a drunk facility, grabbed the guy out of bed, 12-stepped him. They have pictures of this, the before and after, and the whole process. They take him to the meeting. He's like this at a meeting. They got pictures of the meeting like this. And then the before and after, they take him through the steps, and then he becomes a functional member of AA, and then he goes on his first step, on his first 12-step call with his sponsor. And they have a sequence of pictures in Saturday Evening Post. This is before they figured out there should be anonymity. Okay? It's history. It's in there. They used to always have 2 people to do the intervention. One person was never enough. You know, when you see the picture of the guy in the bed, which is Bill Dotson, the 3rd alcoholic, with Dr. Bob and Bill, talking to him about the program. So that's the way, and the word sponsor wasn't even used for this. Now, different programs got involved, and different programs had different problems and different ways of doing sponsorship. But in essence, a sponsor was somebody that you really connected with on a daily basis. You may or may not have worked the steps with him in a rigorous way, because as time went on, what AA figured out is some people can get help and can get recovered. The group can sponsor somebody. In other words, by going out before the meeting and after meeting and talking with people and this and that, you don't have to have a formal sponsor. They figured it out. People can get sober that way, you know. And the emphasis on even any special way of working the steps is also dissipated. And sometimes people said, hey, a guy comes in, hey, I want to work the steps. Step a year. You know, so all these different methodologies came about, and let me see, where do I want to go from there? some groups actually that came along afterwards, ACOA had their own way of sponsorship and didn't even believe in sponsorship. They thought sponsorship was anti-productive. And also, let me say one more thing. The first guy that got sober in California didn't get sober with a sponsor. He got sober by reading the big book. He bought the big book, started his first meeting, and he got sober that way. Never had a sponsor. One of the very big, loving people love him here in Southern California, Chuck C., never had a sponsor. When he asked him, who's your sponsor, he said, the fellowship. Everybody, the different people I go out for coffee with is my sponsor. So, where do I want to go from this? Okay, so you have a lot of different ways of but originally the idea was that you need to connect to somebody on a daily basis to correct your stinking thinking. He is going to be your mind because your thinking is off, so you need somebody to adjust your thinking on a daily basis. And you may or may not have worked the steps with you. And as different programs came along later on, they didn't know how to do the steps, so they came up with their own way of doing the steps. How, for example, Fred Schneider didn't know how AA did the steps, couldn't figure it out. So what he did is he figured out, okay, I'm going to develop a set of questions. You read the big book, and then he made up a bunch of questions. And then he had it made up a sponsorship guide. And every day when you first get into the program, while you're detoxing off of food, he has you discuss and reflect on a certain question on a certain line in the big book. And that is meant to get you focused in breaking your denial, understanding the nature of your addiction, as in reference to AA. And that is a way of then they figured if you did this, you would get the grace and the power to put down food. Okay? In alcoholism, what your sponsor does a lot, he helps you through detox. I mean, yeah, you detox in hospital, but after that, you're still detoxing. So in other words, he is there to help you think through so you don't go out and kill your landlord, et cetera, and so on and so forth. So there's a really big functioning. As the other programs developed, a phenomenon happened where because the individuals didn't do a lot of heavy and dirty sponsorship. Bill didn't sponsor that many people in New York. And so consequently in New York, there for a while when I came in there, nobody sponsored nobody. You know, I mean, the old school guys were still there, but they didn't even push it. You know, because what people are doing is they're reading the 12 and 12, and they were discussing that in meetings, and that was a way of recovering. And so some of the other programs came out, and they didn't know how to do anything. They didn't know how to do the steps. They didn't know anything. So a phenomenon happened that you had a sponsor and you had a step guide. You had a guy that took you through the steps, and another guy was your sponsor. You get where I'm going with this? So it all got fractured, you know. Then in the last 10, 15 years with the internet and the explosion of information, so on and so forth, and all this information, and particularly happened when Joe and Charlie finally became public. Joe and Charlie were two guys. They were sitting in one of the southern states, and they're really pissed off about all the people coming into the meetings from rehabs, using all the new rehab jargon, you know, child within, codependent, and, you know, all this other stuff that they learn in rehab. The medical model and you know, the psychiatric model of how basically what is called addictionology. They didn't understand it, so because they didn't understand it, they rebelled against it. So they band together and they said, let's study this book. Let's try to figure out what this book really means. So they had they started doing workshops around, and people said, ooh, this is fascinating. We forgot about the big book. We forgot about how this works, and so on and so forth. And they did the first event at the World Service Conference in Alcoholics Anonymous, and to jumpstart the whole thing, they become very, very famous. They did workshops all around the world in their interpretation of the 12 steps, their interpretation of the big book. And so And they made it clear, this is not anybody's way. I'm not speaking for Alcoholics Anonymous. This is our interpretation of the big book, and you can do it any way you want to. And they never said their way was the only way. This is just a interpretation. And then other people came along and did their interpretation. There's a process out here. There's a guy here on Monday night that to some people is the PhD version of how to go through the steps. Some people think that the back to basics is the beginner's way. There's the college way, which is Joe and Charlie, and then there's the PhD way, which is comes from the lineage of Dr. Bob down to Colorado to Joe Hawk here in California, and Herb now is the person that is the best that represents that. These are all opinions. These are all different ways of working, and nobody is against any one way of working. So when you ask somebody, what is the purpose of a sponsor? Okay, we have these guys. What is the purpose of the sponsor? Purpose of the sponsor is to guide you to a spiritual experience. That's to guide you to your God. That's all he is. He's a guide to your God. So if your God is, if you have the spiritual experiences, you sitting on a mountaintop, okay, you've arrived, 5 minutes left, you've arrived at a mountaintop, and so now the other people are there that have, in all terms have recovered, and they're on a mountaintop, and you're experienced the fellowship of the Spirit, and you're experiencing the sunshine of love and the sunshine of the Spirit and all this other stuff. Why are they arguing about how they got up there? You know, everybody's saying, oh, I got up on this blue donkey, and I love my blue donkey. My blue donkey is so cool. I got on a mountaintop on my blue donkey. What kind of donkey you came up with? Oh, your donkey is brown? Oh, Your donkey's probably not as good as my donkey. You're probably missing something. You're sitting on a mountaintop. You're probably not as good as me because you came up with a blue donkey. The point is, all these methodologies, they're just donkeys. They're just vehicles to get you to the mountaintop. So stop putting them on a pedestal. They're guides. Now, this is a way of really breaking it down in a kind of a way. They're just different methodologies, and you have to accept that one guy comes up on a blue donkey, another guy comes up on a red donkey. So, anyway.
Are you sort of saying, so don't be an ass about this?
That's right. Don't be an ass about this. Yes. She needs to write my material from now on. I'm way too serious. We got to team up. So anyway,
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi,
go ahead.
Eddie.
Sure.
Franny, under earner. I'm gratefully recovering from last night.
I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt. We do have a question.
Oh, it's not time yet?
You know, I'll entertain a question anytime.
Okay, but we want to keep, we got other, okay.
Okay, well, you tell me when I'm done, okay?
All right. The word interim, I've heard it a lot in other programs, and
You know,
the
that just
idea of an
basically
interim
means
sponsor.
Yeah, that basically means the guy's probably not invested in you in taking you the whole way. He's just there to guide you until you can find somebody better. That doesn't mean he's not going to be your sponsor. He just says, you know, it's a test thing. You know, it's really weird getting a sponsor. I asked one guy in DA once I was shopping around for a sponsor, so I asked a bunch of different people. So I asked this guy, would you be open for sponsorship? And he said, sure. Give me your number. I took his number. 2 weeks went by. He calls me up. He says, okay, I'm going to fire you as a sponsor. You haven't called me the whole time. And I thought, we never made the agreement to sponsor. Just ask you if you're open for sponsorship. So, you know, different things. This is not meant to say anything bad about him. But all this, and because he's a good friend of mine now, the point is that misinterpretation can happen, you know, in this whole game. I had a sponsor where we ended up you don't want to know about my sponsorship I have great sponsorship relationships. I have some really toxic. I got into a fist fight with one of my sponsors because I confronted him about his 13 stepping at one point, and he took exception to it. And then when he saw me before the meeting, he ran at me like a freight train, punching me, and I just went like this up in a ball. And luckily, this guy, this other guy, who's a burly guy with tattoos all over the place that I got along with well, pulled him off of me. Obviously, there was something going on with him because 6 months later, he jumped off the Verrazano Bridge. He committed suicide. Yeah. And I've had some great sponsors. So
that
I'm out
brings
of
up
time.
the real purpose of my question really is in UA, for us to possibly adopt the idea or think about the idea of...
I'm not proposing anything. I'm just telling you some stuff.
No, I already proposed it. I put it in an email to a GSP. But your idea of, like, do you think someone would be less likely maybe to jump off the Verrazano Bridge if they possibly had just at least for the moment a stopgap interim sponsor or somebody who they didn't necessarily think is going to be the real deal?
I think it's all good. I think interim sponsorship is all good. I love the back to basic approach. I love John's approach. I love everybody's approach. Seriously, guys, I love everybody's approach. And every approach will give you an experience, a spiritual experience. And sometimes you need to do one, and then you need to do another. Some people, there's a fellowship called the Fellowship of the Spirit, which they believe in redoing all these steps every year. In other words, in finding a new sponsor and doing them all over again. Brutal, right? Ugh. But they do believe in that. They also believe in multiple fourth steps, where you do a fifth step with him, then you do a fifth step with him, and a fifth step with him, and a fifth step with her, and this and that. So there's a lot of ways of doing this stuff. There isn't just one way. Okay? And the thing is, the best thing for us is to not demonize somebody when they do it some other way that we don't understand. Remember, one of the biggest problems in this program is contempt before investigation. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't investigated that process, please don't go into contempt about it. Okay?
Bravo. Good work, Eddie. Eddie. Great. Thank you.
Oh, here we go. So you're on. Oh. All right. So this is Andrew on sponsorship styles.
So we're going to first start with the Edwardian style. Yes, my friend, we must start working the steps with all dispatch. I want to hear your feelings of commitment to a higher power with pronounced alacrity and a dearth of asperity within a fortnight. And then there's the Bronx style. Look, you messed up. I'm not going to help you. God's going to help you, not me. You hear me? You looking at me? Now, don't look at me, look at higher power. Hey. Here's a Jewish style. So listen. Gotta do the work. Don't be a schmuck. AA style. It says here on page 489 of the big book, we turn out, there is one God and it's not you. All right? Okay. How much time do I have?
15.
15? Okay. How much did I utilize already? A sponsor is not a guru. If you have a sponsor who tries to be a guru, find a new sponsor. A sponsor is not someone you call up all the time for advice on business or personal matters. I mean, it can be in other fellowships, but in this fellowship, it's really a tour guide through the 12 steps. Sponsorship in UA really takes, I don't know, about like 6-7 months. Takes about 2 months to go through step 4 and 5, because that's 80 to 90 resentments, 80 to 90 sexual history examples, except in my case, which are 43. But there is another program for that. And fears. So it's like, it's like those 4 or 5 columns, writing it all down. 8 and 9 could take 2 months. 8 and 9 could easily take 2 months. So I speak to my sponsees once a week, ideally, and I really do not believe in getting stuck on the steps. The whole idea about, I hear, and everyone's heard this in 12-step meetings, I'm really stuck on step 4. I'm really stuck on step 9. Well, whoever says that has a sponsor that is doing them a gross injustice, for the simple reason that you cannot allow a sponsee to be stuck on any step. Can never happen. Because we need to always move ahead. We need to move ahead. And the reason why is because there's only one step that has to be done perfectly. And which one is that? One, right. The rest of them are not perfect. But they're never ending either. Because when you work all 12 steps, and then you have to have a sponsee, or else you'll lose what you had. You're working it away again. You're working it, and with each sponsee, you're working the steps again. Not maybe the same way, but you're re-experiencing all the steps. So it's important to never get stuck, and if you're sponsoring anyone, never allow a sponsee. I make it very clear. I say to each sponsee that I have, hey, I'm willing to commit to you 6-7 months of every Monday or Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. For half an hour or an hour. If it takes a year, I'll be with you a year. But if you stop working, the relationship is over. I will end it like that. I will not tolerate any sponsee that I have saying, oh, I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. I mean, situations aside, maybe if a death in the family, physical illness, but, in terms of regular, someone saying, oh, I just didn't get around to it, I can't do it. You got about a week. And I had a gentleman in the Midwest who called me up and he said, I really didn't do the work. I haven't moved. I'm sitting here. I've got this inertia thing. I said, fine, I understand. No, I don't expect you to finish step 1 next week, but I expect you to do some work on it. And here's the deal. You do some work on it and we'll continue. If you stop, then we'll have to say goodbye. I make it very, very clear. I've heard of sponsor-sponsee relationships that are very much like a coach type thing, where the sponsor it's almost like a helicopter sponsor. With a helicopter theme this weekend, But the helicopter sponsor who is like trying to micromanage, trying to get into different elements of life, I really do not agree with that, and maybe it exists in other fellowships. I know probably it's different in Al-Anon. I mean, my AA sponsor and I, we speak, once a week, and that's okay, because we're basically both Jewish isolationists, so it sort of works out that way. But there are people who speak every day in the Beverage Fellowship, and that's fine. I couldn't deal with that right now, but but it works for us. My bottom line is that I'm a tour guide through the steps, and that is all I am. I am guiding the person to do the work, to have the greatest receptivity, to a power greater than themselves through 1 to 12. And I've had sponsees the last year who have really busted their tail. Because the thing about this fellowship is that even if you've worked all the 12 steps, what happens then is that you're really open for being dependent on your action partner. Before I worked the 12 steps, this is true, before I worked the 12 steps, I had the theory of speaking to my action partner every day at 9 o'clock in the morning. Do you think it happened? Do you think it happened? No, it didn't. It didn't, because I had too much disease, and we got into the missed calls. Oh, I'll speak to you next week. Oh, you missed a call today. And basically, massive amount of time was wasted, and the relationship deteriorated. For me to be able to have committed my time to speak to this woman for a year and a half at 10 to 8 in the morning, every 5 days a week, I needed to have worked the steps. Because without that, I just would not have done it. I just wouldn't have had the spiritual strength to do it. To commit to her, to commit to a UA abstinence plan that I followed for a year and a half, and it's changed now, I had to work the steps. For me to be able to speak to my sponsor after I finished working the steps, I would have had to work the steps. And to be able to take any actions at all, I would have had to work the steps. And this is the whole deal about overcoming under-earning and vision, that people who are not under-earners have resistance to their vision, right? They have to leave their comfort zone. So the allegedly normal, non-addictive, non-compulsive people out there, all 20 of them in the LA basin, right, and no one's there. They're just texting in their shares. Those people have resistance. I'm sure that when Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were in the garage with the initial Apple computer, and they were thinking about putting it out there, they had to have some fear. When they went to Wall Street for the first funding, they had to have some fear. How could you not? I mean, how could you not? But here's the deal. They didn't do it alone. And we always want to come back to doing it alone. And we can't. We really can't. So the rest of, when my sponsor said, you know, Andrew, you've done step 9, now you're on television, you recovered, that didn't mean I was finished. What it meant was that I had gotten out of my way enough to really work UA and take scary, bite-sized actions to recover, which I'm continually doing. So in other words, a year ago or 2 years ago and now are the same. I had scary actions to take then, I have scary actions to take now, but I also have step 10 and 11, and I also have people to talk to and to bookend with. And my current action partner, so the time has now changed to 9:30, 5 days a week, who is involved with UA How. Which we'll talk about this afternoon. UA How requires 3 outreach calls a day. 3 outreach calls a day. Not on voicemail. You have to contact and connect with 3 people a day. You can't just leave voicemail. And check in. 3 outreach calls a day. Plus, give 2 action meetings a month, or 2 earning plan meetings a month, plus get 1 earning plan meeting a month. Plus, turn over your time to your action partner every day. So and that includes sleep. So I generally do this with her 5 days a week. So this would be impossible without having worked the steps with John. So this is all about my functioning now and overcoming under-earning is within the realm of sanity. But it's not done in an isolated manner. But it doesn't mean that I don't have fear. It doesn't mean that I don't have resistance. I do, but I'll own it, and I'll turn it over to God. So again, but you see, then now I'm in the realm of sanity. Now I'm in the realm of sanity. Yeah, yes, sir. Bye bye.
Do you turn over your time you plan on doing for the day, or what you did the day before?
I'm from the old school. I do it from what I did the day before. There are some people who plan it, but you know what? I find that time, you know, and I'm certainly, maybe I'll change. Maybe I'll start planning it a day before, and do it that way. But I have found that the time recording tool is about traction. It's about having a sense of what I've done, to be aware that, hey, yes, I do know I worked on my vision yesterday for 2 hours. I do know that I worked yesterday for 8 hours. I do know that I slept for 8 hours. I do know I had 2 hours of recreation. Or one day I had no vision, and I had 3 hours of recreation. Or I had 5 hours of service. So I do know from one day to the next what I did. So I do have that sense of sanity. But I'm willing to experiment with planning it and do it that way. You know, that might be a better way of doing it, you know, and I'm open to it. Yes. Oh, you're scratching your ear. Okay. All right. So, anyway, yeah, so I would suggest, you know, avoid sponsors who are gurus, who are trying to micromanage. I certainly couldn't deal with that. A sponsor is not a higher power. Sponsor is not a rabbi, a priest. A sponsor really is a tour guide through the 12 steps within this fellowship. And whenever a sponsor, this happened to me last week, a sponsor called me and she said, I've got this situation with my uncle regarding a billing, regarding money. And I really believe that, you know, the traditionals will keep you alive, my opinions will kill you. So I said, have an action meeting. You know, have an action meeting and talk the problem out. I did her a favor by saying that, because that way she could sit down, God, talk through two people, work it out, and that way it isn't like one guy saying what I think you should do is. I may be wrong. I don't want to give it what I think. What am I, Nostradamus? I could see the future. I go to the movies with Nostradamus. I stopped doing it because I found out what the ending is. Anyway, bit of an abstract joke. Anyway, any other questions before I fall asleep again? Yeah? Oh, no? Okay. Yes.
I just wanted to ask what you do when you prosecute, what you recommend for prosecuting people, and then all the programs that I have through sponsors, and I do these sponsors like,
Yeah, you gotta specify the question a little bit, because I gotta repeat it onto here.
what do you do when you have 3 sponsors and they're working 4 programs, but you need a DA sponsor? It's a lot to balance.
So then you'd need 4 sponsors. Is that what you're saying? You know what? There's an old saying in 12-step recovery: we got to take care of what's killing us. You know, I mean, my most neglected program now is BDA, and I will be at the BDA meeting in Manhattan this coming Wednesday night, because that program has to become. I will pray for the willingness to make it really strong, and I'll get a BDA sponsor. I don't think it's really a problem, because you got to look at what's killing you. You know, what do you need to really take care of now? I mean, there are just so many hours in the day, and I mean, someone suggested that I go to Al-Anon AC, Adult Children of Alcoholics, Al-Anon, and I went to one meeting, got thoroughly depressed, and I said, I can't. They said, do an inventory of parents. I said, I don't think so. I don't think I'm going to be doing an inventory of my mentally ill mother. You know, I'll be on the daybed, you know, watching reruns of Dr. Phil. I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon. Yes. Excellent question. What is the function of a sponsor after we go through the 12 steps? You know, again, it's a person to check in with. For example, very recently, I needed to make amends to a woman who owned a pet shop, pet store, food owner, and I spoke to my sponsor. I spoke to John. I said, look, what do you think? Because in a question like amends, I need to find out whether I'm hurting her or do nothing. And that was the question. He gave me a great answer. But I'm not going to call him up and ask him anything about the speaker industry. I'm not going to call him up and ask him about stand-up comedy. I'm not going to ask him for job advice, because he may not be qualified on any of that. It actually says that in the big book. Sometimes, you know, your sponsor is not qualified to answer these questions. And it's really not appropriate to treat them as this, you know, Yoda-like figure. So anyway, that's time, and here's Steve.
Thanks, Andrew. I'd like to see a show of hands of everyone in the room who does not have a sponsor currently. So quite a bit. I'd say half, maybe about half. Okay. So our next speaker is actually going to be Dayna, who's going to come on up and talk about how to find a sponsor, her experience, strength, and hope on that journey. Please welcome Dayna.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dana. I am
Hi, Dana.
gratefully recovering under-earner, and I'm glad that I was asked to speak on this topic. Can I see the hands again? There's a lot of people here that don't have sponsors. If you don't have a sponsor, you're actively seeking a sponsor. Okay. I think what I'll share is what happened for me as I was seeking a sponsor and also as a sponsor. Probably because I come from other fellowships like many of you, I knew to be in touch with people, and I was in an incredible amount of pain when I got here, as we all are. And for me, I was just talking to John outside about this illusion of control and my desire to stay isolated and not connected. I'm so afraid to be out of control and connected. As an under-earner, I feel I've been afraid to receive support. And is it working?
40 minutes.
Thank you.
45.
And I need support so badly, obviously. And so when I came to UA, I started connecting with others on the phone. And I think knowing how to do that, I developed relationships with folks on the phone. And there came a point where I was in so much pain, I was like, I have to start this process. And I just asked the person I was talking to. I didn't have any real forethought about it. And he said yes. And that's how that got started for me. I know that's not always the case, but that's what happened. What a gift that person was in my life and getting me grounded and showing me what's what in the program. With some time, what happened was it wasn't the right fit for me. And what I noticed about myself as an under-earner is I think, holy shit, I'm in up to my neck and I need something now, and I could just grab whatever is there. And with a little bit of recovery, I'm starting to learn that the more prosperous thought is that I could take my time and see what actually works, what actually fits, do I resonate with this person? Maybe not have to come from fear and desperation. Although, desperation is a gift. I'm just saying what happened in my second choice of sponsor is that because, I've been developing relationships with folks in UA, I was regularly talking to probably, 5 different women. And so I talked to them, I said, look, I'm gonna need a sponsor. There were 2 women that that have been here at the conference. And I said, I'm gonna need a sponsor. Both of them made themselves available to me. What happened was that both of them told me to take my time in making the decision. That was radical for me to be given that space and that time. Let's see what higher power has in store for us here. What is the real, the work of doing the steps is just, it's all about higher power. So anyway, I ended up making my choice, and I've worked with a sponsor. I've been through all 12 steps, and this program has completely and totally, absolutely changed who I am. And the ground that I'm standing on today, it's been 2 years I've been coming, and it's completely different. It's undeniable. It's a miracle. And so how to find a sponsor? I think it's really important. I've been reminded a lot, especially in the beginning, not to focus on morbid thinking. It's never gonna, I have to be aware of my thinking. It's never gonna happen. All this lack consciousness, there's not sponsors. And I just have to make connections with other people and make that a priority. I think that's what I would suggest doing, and you're probably already doing. But if you're not in regular contact with folks in UA that you feel a connection to or have the recovery that you want, then that's what you need to be doing. It's sort of obvious like that. Just be in touch with people because we need support. I need support. I need as much support as I can. And so be in touch with people and ask. That's what you have to do. You don't put your phone number out there saying I'm looking and expect someone else to come to you. But that's my thought, that if I want a sponsor, I have to ask. It's my job to find that. I'll say this, I started sponsoring, and it's a huge gift to be a sponsor. And I do have a limit on the number of people that I'm able to sponsor, and just for my recovery in my program right now. But it seems to be fluctuating. I had someone that stayed with me for, I don't know, 6 months. I had someone who stayed with me for 6 days. If you're in regular contact with me, like what's happening at a live meeting I go to, there's a woman who's been checking in with me. She's aware. We're talking. She knows when that opening happened, and she said, "Oh, will you sponsor me?" I said, "Yes." It's like that. And it's that simple. So the last thing I guess I would say, while actively seeking a sponsor, is obvious, but maybe you haven't thought of it, to give it to God. I mean, there's mysterious ways this happens. You have to, I think praying about it and saying, God, I'm really, this is what I'm wanting. And in UA, I'm starting to learn that what it is my heart most wants is possible, and it's inevitable that it's going to happen. You're gonna have a sponsor. I think those are all my thoughts. There's a lot of things I can say, but as far as what to do, is that my topic? How to find a sponsor. You have to be in touch with people, lots of people, and there's so much generous, amazing support here. It's pretty incredible. Folks with time that I have a sponsor, but I like that I'm having to give this talk, because I want to, and being here with all of you just inspires me to want to be in more touch, because it supports my recovery. So I think I'll stop there and then ask if you have questions so I know how to direct this. Does anyone have any questions? It's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Yes. I did not. So the question, thank you, Maggie. The question is, did I have to start the steps over when I started with a new sponsor? And the answer is that I did not. So I know that everyone sponsors differently, and I was willing to do whatever needed to be done. I was just starting my 4th step, and she said, let's continue with that.
Could you, whichever way is comfortable, share some clear changes as a result of having a sponsor in your life?
What has changed? So the question is, please, to name some clear changes that have happened in my life as a result of having a sponsor. Okay. Well, as a result of having thank you for that question. As a result of having a sponsor in this program who so lovingly, generously has been holding me for almost 2 years and walking me through the steps. She's not my therapist. She's not my friend. She is my friend. But her main purpose has been to hold my hand and bring my hand to God's hand through the 12 steps in UNDEREARNERS Anonymous. So she's supported me in doing the tools. But the step process has been the thing that has transformed me. And I think just to receive her love and her guidance and her getting to know me, as I read my 5th step to her, and she knows me so well, and she can cut through and say, no, like that's not. So you asked me for specifically what has changed in my life as a result of doing the steps.
You look better.
I look better. I feel better. It's true. My skin's gotten clearer. And that's actually true. It's actually true. So, okay, thank you. I mean, there's so many things. I don't know why I'm hesitating. Thank you, Maggie. The laughter helps. The laughter helps. I am laughing a lot more. But I had a real physical bottom. Like, the exhaustion was pretty bad. And so my health has been restored. And I have energy. But not only that, like the doctor, like in the blood work, it was like I'm pre-diabetic. I'm only 40. Like what was going wrong as a result of my lifestyle decisions, my eating decisions? It's just a lot of things my prosperity has turned out to be. Not just my earning, but certainly that exhaustion made it impossible for me to work. And that's what really got my attention. I was like, shoot, how am I going to do this? So I received my health back, my energy back, and connection with others. I have a vibrant life. I ended up moving because of the timesheet, and I realized how much time I was spending in the car. I didn't want to do that. I've been held to get new bedding and like have beautiful environment that I live in, and to leave an under-earning job and to trust myself and make my paintings, and I could go on and on and on. Thank you for the question.
Yeah.
In the back?
Bill,
Hi, Bill.
did you ever get stuck in your relationship with your sponsor, and how did you get through that?
I mean, I certainly got pissed off at her. Yeah.
Actually, could you repeat the question?
Oh,
It's
thank
being
you. So the
recorded.
question, thank you. So the question is, how did I ever get stuck in my relationship with my sponsor, and how did I get through that? So by stuck, the first thing that came to my mind is, did I ever get pissed off at my sponsor? Of course I did.
Disease ever get stuck?
Did my disease ever get stuck? I'm not really sure how to answer that. I've rarely missed a meeting with my sponsor in the last 2 years. I'm willing. I'm not always willing, but I show up anyway. So I show up anyway, and I talk to her anyway. And sometimes I don't. I'm half there, but I show up. I can say that. Yeah.
Thanks, Dana. Actually, if people can come up to the microphone, we can know it'll get recorded.
Oh,
My
cool.
question for you is,
Okay.
for people that are either new to UA or don't yet have a sponsor and have been around for a while, they might be intimidated or they might be discouraged by the lack of local sponsors, might be intimidated to ask on the phone. But if people are really thirsty for recovery and they're feeling intimidated on the phone, how would you? What is your opinion, first of all, on getting a sponsor that's remote, not local, meeting in person versus on the phone? Is there an upside or a downside to either? And you mentioned also the example of somebody just getting to know you. Maybe they had their eye on you as a potential sponsor and they became, is that a strategy, or is there another strategy about just announcing at meetings wholesale, I'm looking for a sponsor, could anyone please contact me? So strategies to find
All
a
right.
sponsor.
There was like 3 questions
Yeah,
in there.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's cool. I think I got
Okay,
it.
okay.
I'll start backwards
All right,
and
you're
go,
good,
go
you're good.
forward. Okay, so I'm not a big fan of the strategy of, hey, I'm looking for a sponsor, because I'm not comedy. I believe that if you're looking for a sponsor, it's your job to find a sponsor. That is for you. And part of the process is the asking and the, taking that, making that decision and doing that. So don't raise your hand and say you're looking for, I don't know. That's my opinion. And then another question is sort of the pros and cons of a local sponsor as opposed to a sponsor over the phone. Both of the sponsors that I've had enormous recovery in UA through the phone. So much, and it's mind-boggling to me, but my life has transformed through the phone. Both my sponsors happened through the phone. The second sponsor, I did get to meet her at one of the Share Days a year or 2 ago. I guess it was 2 years ago. And I did happen to get, face-to-face contact, but we do all the work on the phone. Actually, last year was really cool. I got to do my 5th step with her live because we met at the Share Day. But I don't know. I can say that if you feel a connection with someone on the phone, that you need to follow through with that. It doesn't matter. There's no, barrier in space and time. It's lovely that it's starting to happen, that there's this great, community in LA now, this strong meeting, and that folks are getting to know me that way. And, but those are my thoughts there. And there was one other question. I don't remember what it was.
You know what? That's great, actually, what you
Okay.
gave me. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Your experience with this male-female situation, and with whether or not to start action meetings, action partners before or after doing the steps.
Okay, thank you, Peggy. So my opinion on whether to work with a male sponsor or a female sponsor, or whether it's important to stay with the same gender, I think it's really individual. I think that's really my opinion about it. It worked better for me to have a female sponsor. It gets complicated. And then the second question about action groups, I think as soon as you come to UA, you can get an action group. And maybe my opinion is to get an action group together right away. And so I don't think that you need to be with a sponsor yet to receive an action group. I think the way that I've been sponsored, I feel that both are maybe not equal importance, but like really are my main support in UA. And so an action group you can start right away, and that means, if you're new, to find a man and a woman that you resonate with. That can be a team for you. I've had the same folks with me over time, and they know me. They know the trajectory of my recovery, and it's been an immeasurable support. But I don't think those things are in conflict. Did I answer your question?
Thank you, Dana.
Yeah, okay.
Hi, I'm Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Thank you so much for your information. I was wondering what your opinion is about what would be reasons to change sponsors. I've heard things like in different programs, like if you're constantly talking to your sponsor and you go away from this person feeling awful, you know, maybe that's a signal to, you know, switch, or what would, what kind of conflicts? I realize that we need to work out different conflicts, but what if they don't?
Thank you. That's a great question. Thanks, Catherine. Because sometimes I don't like my sponsor, but that doesn't mean I'm not being sponsored well, you know? And so how to sort that. What I can speak to is my own experience, and there came a point in my recovery when the style of sponsorship I was in when I started was just exactly what I needed. And it was a lot of, this person was very available to me. They were telling me what to do, like, every day. And I needed that. I wanted someone to just tell me what to do. And then there came a point in my recovery, I think it was after I did step 3, where I was like, oh, shit. It's for me to begin to develop this relationship and then listen and hear what my higher... I wanted a different kind... I knew in my heart of hearts that I wanted a different kind of recovery. And so I needed a different kind of sponsorship. For me, there was also an element of, like, very critical. My sponsor, I became uncomfortable with the level of involvement. I wanted it at first. You're telling me what to do every minute and how to say what I'm saying and what to do. And after a while, I was like, it doesn't feel quite right to me. That's not what I am wanting. Shoot, I don't know if I'm answering that question, but
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, you're
One
saying
part.
yes, so I'm going to stop.
How do you end it?
How
If
do-
you're a sponsee or a sponsor?
How do you end it? Okay, one other thing I want to say about that. I'm an addict and I'm sneaky. So I think I also want to say that before I ended things with my first sponsor, I talked to a lot of people. That was not an easy decision. That took a long time for me to do that. That wasn't like, oh, I don't like you. I don't like how you're acting. I think I need to switch. Because that's different. And I've done that too, by the way, in the past. You know, not wanting, because it's tough. This is tough work, you know. But when the time came, it was a God thing. And it was like, it just came through me. It wasn't like, oh, I'm so mad. It was like, wow, thank you so much for what you've given to me and what you've done for me. And it's time for me to go. And then when, you know, sponsees have left, you know, have moved on from working with me, it's a similar thing. I know how scary it is. You feel like you're like breaking up and all of that. But, you know, a simple, you know, thank you so much. And it's just time. This is a, you know, it's God's time. And we're of service to one another in this beautiful way for as long as we're supposed to, you know? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Carolyn from Irvine, gratefully recovering under earner, and thank you so much. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I just wanted to share my experience. When I first got here, I was really desperate, a little over 2 years ago, and so I thought I need a local sponsor because I have history with other sponsors. And so I got this local sponsor, and in the meantime, I kept going to my Language of the Heart meeting, 8:30 a.m. Eastern, and I kept hearing real strong recovery there. And my experience was I asked somebody that I totally connected with, I thought, and then it wasn't that I outgrew her, it's that I knew I needed something deeper, something way bigger than I had ever thought my authentic self needed. And so when I asked this other sponsor, I had already knew that I had to let the other one go. He wasn't that anxious to take me, and it was about a 6-month process. And my experience is this, is I want to totally ID with what you said, that I live on an outpost. I live in Orange County. I can't get to the new meeting. I'm not making excuses. I'm doing a beat job, trying to be self-supporting through my own contributions, raising 3 teens on my own. And with that said, I physically can't get to live meetings. I mean, I want to, but I don't. And so I rely on the share days. I rely on these coming together times to be with you. And as I said before, I did my 11th step. My sponsor happens to be here. He's my transcontinental sponsor. So all I want to say, if you're actively seeking a sponsor, you totally must be open that your sponsor could end up being someone who lives in Panama. And it may be these 2 or 3 hour commitments a week. I'm just using you as an example. Okay, New York. We'll go back to New York. New York. You know, those 2-3 hour increments that they're willing to do, because that's what the gift is that they want to give to you. We have to be open. Oh my gosh, because it is the language of the heart. And I just wanted to say that, you know. I don't have these face-to-face meetings. We have these talks. And it is so real. And it is that 6th step for me.
Yeah, thank you.
Sense for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Recovery happens on the phone. It's powerful. Okay, we still have time? Do you have a question?
Two more questions.
2 more questions, okay.
Bill again.
Hi, Bill.
For the newcomer, what I've heard suggested is that somebody ask somebody to help them with a step or to be a temporary sponsor. What is your opinion on that?
I mean, I think getting support is great. You know? We come in here like raw and like with your ass in your hand, and it's like, please, get as much support as you can. But make no mistake, doing the steps with a sponsor is doing the steps with a sponsor. They can't really be replaced or fragmented or, you know? Like, so I would say if someone wants to be a temporary sponsor and to kind of hold you and orient you to the program and let you know like what's what, that's cool. But just get a sponsor and start doing the steps. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hi, my name's Jenny.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi. So I guess this would be similar to like with your hairdresser. How do you break up with a sponsor? What kind of a response have you had in the past?
What kind of response?
From the sponsor have you had when you have had to change?
So I've been in other 12-step programs for 19 years, so I've had a bunch of different sponsors, and it's often been hard for me to complete things. Hello, I'm in UA. You know, so, you know, when the time has come that I have to say, you know, I need to move on. Like I said a few minutes ago, what I like to say is thank you so much. We have had this time. You have walked me that this is precious, and it's time for me to go. You know, I don't think we need to get into lots of reasons why and so forth, but it's important to be direct and clear and say this is what I need and this is where I'm going. Your recovery is for you. You know, the sponsor is of service to you, and you get to, you know, make that choice. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
One more day.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Shahal. I'm an under-earner.
Hi.
Anyway, thank you very much for your share. I would like to ask you, do you recommend any specific phone meeting that is easier to find a sponsor in? I'm kind of new to the program, and I was wondering if I can find someone in person, is there a specific phone meeting you recommend that there's people that are available to be sponsored? Because it's kind of not easy to find a sponsor in this program rather than other fellowships. So
Okay, so you're gonna find a sponsor. So I recommend that thought, just sit, like words have power. So just like saying out loud, you can't find a sponsor. I'm not gonna, just to be aware of that, then maybe take that out of your language. Okay. You're gonna find a sponsor. And it's so intuitive, and your God is working in your life, and you're gonna get on the meetings that resonate for you, and you're gonna listen in to people that feel like, wow, I want that. They have recovery, I want that. And you're gonna ask for their phone number, and you're just gonna call them. And you're not gonna call them and be like, hi, I need a sponsor. I recommend calling and just connecting. And maybe calling them again. Hey, check out what's going on in my recovery. I don't know, I need help. Could you tell me about this? Maybe call them again. and get to know them. And then you might get to know them and be like, oh my God, I'm not going to ask this person to be my sponsor after the third call. But give it some space. Allow yourself to start to call people. I mean, it's well known that some meetings are more well attended than others on the phone, but I don't know. You could get on a meeting and there's 3 people and your sponsor could be there. So the recovery happens in the meetings, you know? So I know, the meeting I like to go to, and it might not work for you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, available sponsors are everywhere.
Thank you.
Sure. Is that it? Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.